Giver, Chapter 4, Part 2. He helped the woman from the chair, led her to the tub, removed her robe, and steadied her with his hand on her arm as she stepped in and lowered herself. She leaned back and sighed with pleasure, her head on the soft cushioned headrest. Comfortable? He asked, and she nodded, her eyes closed. Jonas squeezed cleansing lotion onto the clean sponge at the edge of the tub and began to wash her frail body. Last night he had watched his father bathe the new child. This was much the same. The fragile skin, the soothing water, the gentle motion of his hand slippery with soap. The relaxed, peaceful smile on the woman's face reminded him of Gabriel being bathed, and the nakedness, too. It was against the rules for children or adults to look at another nakedness, but the rule did not apply to new children or the old. Jonas was glad. It was a nuisance to keep oneself covered while changing for games, and the required apology if one had by mistake glimpsed another's body was always awkward. He couldn't see why it was necessary. He liked the feeling of safety here, in this warm and quiet room. He liked the expression of trust on the woman's face as she lay in the water unprotected, exposed, and free. From the corner of his eye, he could see his friend Fiona help the old man from the tub and tenderly pat his thin, naked body dry with an absorbent cloth. She helped him into his robe. Jonas thought Larissa had drifted into sleep, as the old often did, and he was careful to keep his motion steady and gentle so he wouldn't wake her. He was surprised when she spoke, her eyes still closed. "This morning we celebrated the release of Roberto," she told him. "It was wonderful." "I knew Roberto," Jonas said. "I helped with his feeding last time. I was there just a few weeks ago." "He was a very interesting man." Orisa opened her eyes happily. "They told his whole life before they released him," she said. "They always do, but to be honest," she whispered with a mischievous look, "some of the tellings are a little boring. I've even seen some of the old fall asleep during the tellings. When they released Edna recently, did you know Edna?" Jonas shook his head. He could not recall anyone named Edna. "Well, they try to make her life sound meaningful. And of course," she said primly, "all lives are meaningful. I don't mean that they aren't. But Edna, my goodness, she was a birth mother, and then she worked in food production for years until she came here. She never even had a family unit." Larissa lifted her head and looked around to make sure no one was listening. Then she confided, "I don't think Edna was very smart." Jonas laughed. He rinsed her left arm, laid it back into the water, and began to wash her feet. She murmured with pleasure as he massaged her feet with a sponge. "But Roberto's life was wonderful," Larissa went on, after a moment. "He had been an instructor of 11s. You know how important that is? And he'd been on the planning committee, and goodness, I don't know how he found the time. He also raised two very successful children, and he was also the one who did the landscaping design for the Central Plaza. He didn't do the actual labor, of course. Now you're back. Lean forward and I'll help you sit up." Jonas put his arm around her and supported her as she sat. He squeezed the sponge against her back and began to rub her sharp boned shoulders. "Tell me about the celebration." "Well, there was the telling of his life. That was always first. Then the toast. We all raised our glasses and cheered. We chanted the anthem. He made a lovely goodbye speech, and several of us made little speeches wishing him well. I didn't, though. I've never been fond of public speaking." He was thrilled. You should have seen him, the look on his face when they let him go. Jonas slowed his strokes on of his hand on her back thoughtfully. "Larissa," he asked, "what happens when they make the actual release? Where exactly did Roberto go?" She lifted her bare, wet shoulders in a small shrug. "I don't know. I don't think anybody does, except the committee. He just bowed to all of us and then walked like they all do through the special door in the releasing room. But you should have seen his look. Pure happiness, I'd call it." Jonas grinned. "I wish I'd been there to see it," Larissa found. "I don't know why they don't let children come. Not enough room, I guess. They should enlarge the releasing room. We'll have to suggest that to the committee. Maybe they'll study it," Jonas said slyly. And Larissa chortled with laughter. "Right," she hooted, and Jonas helped her from the tub.